And so the understanding of atheism as a standard of factual truth that there is no God is not only becoming a third tier belief, it's almost becoming non-existent, because this generation is so inquisitive, and they're mostly becoming so inquisitive with the supernatural and spiritualism because of their favorite musicians and artists and entertainers, actors, actresses, etc., etc. And so what we were saying before in the beginning, it's going to become an undeniable fact as you move forward that not only does God exist, but the devil is very real. And there's no way that we can deny his existence anymore, because he is flaunting in broad daylight that he's here and that he has people who actually believe in him and are willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that's true and proven true.
Thank you for tuning in to Blurry Creatures podcast. This week we have KingKat back on the show. Those of you who know KingKat, he's a truth speaker on Instagram and a good friend of ours. And we're going to talk a lot about, basically what happened last night at the Grammys, all the weird stuff, satanic imagery that's just coming out of the bushes right in your face these days. And we talk a lot about culture. I know the Super Bowl's coming up, which also typically has its own imagery that they push on the masses. So we're talking a lot about culture, media, and a lot of the good stuff on this episode. If you want to support the podcast, blurrycreatures.com/members. Thank you to all the new members that are signing up. And also, we have a lot of stuff going into BlurryCon. We've been working nonstop trying to make this event our first event, the best ever. If you want to get a streaming ticket to the event, we hired 3 or 4 guys coming in, and it's not going to be your typical live stream. It's going to be interactive. It's going to be like you're right there. And we have a whole crew here who's going to help us stream this event to all you listeners out there all over the world. So go to blurrycreatures.com, scroll down, click the flyer. You can buy a digital ticket, and you can be at BlurryCon with us in a few weeks. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast, listening to this podcast, sharing it around, giving us a review on iTunes, and you guys are the best. And let's get KingKat on this one.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
The Smithsonian, that if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm. It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
All right, welcome back to Blurry Creatures. This week we have KingKat from Instagram, our good friend, truth speaker, truth seeker, fellow warrior, trying to proclaim the gospel, the truth, and all the weird things in the Blurryverse. Welcome back to the podcast, KingKat. Thanks for being with us again.
It is a pleasure. It is a pleasure being here. All I can say is, man, no better way to start off the new year. Well, we're already in February, but it is epic being on Blurry Creatures again.
Oh, dude, it's great to have you back. I know that our first show with you, we talked about aliens and exposure and disclosure, and it was super cool to talk about that. And since then, I think that we've developed an Instagram friendship. I know you're down in Texas and we're in Tennessee, but big fans of what you're doing with your page and your work, and really just having your thumb or your finger on the pulse of culture, and then filtering that back through the truth and through the biblical truth. And so when we were going back and forth, we had talked for a while about wanting to do another show and it just seemed like the right time here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been we're recording it this week after the Grammys. And one of the things we talked and kicked around, Kevin, was the idea that, the idea of exposing and discussing the occult and satanic ritual and worship really in the entertainment business. And, this week there's been a ton in the news about a Grammys performance, by Sam Smith that was really a bizarre satanic themed performance. And I thought that would be a good place to start this conversation, would be kind of what we talked about pre-roll. And, because I think there's a lot of people, and this is what I want to say, there's a lot of people, and and I'm sure you've seen this too, and I want to ask you about this as well. Maybe we start with this, is there's a lot of people on social media that when people raise the alarm about this kind of stuff and say, hey, look, this is very overt, this is, they're not hiding anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That people say it's cosplay. They're just trying to elicit a reaction. This is Ozzy Osbourne, play my record backwards, and it says "Hail Satan." It's literally just it's meant to be reactionary and elicit reaction, and meant to provide publicity for them, more or less. That's what people are saying. This is like sort of the pushback to the idea that they're just overtly out in the open, showing their allegiance to the darkness.
I would say, there's a lot of skepticism, because especially from both camps, there's political gaslighting and then there's spiritual gaslighting, and so what we're seeing a lot of today is a lot of spiritual gaslighting when we see, obviously, like you were saying, overt satanic themes and undertones when it comes to the entertainment industry or when it comes to musicians and artists. And I was saying this yesterday on my Instagram stories that Satan is no longer cares about hiding. He's very out in the open now, and you have to purposely close your eyes to not see. And I really do believe that we're coming to a space in our culture today where Satanism and undertones, and also the entertainment industry, which is just very, very prevalent and just straight up in your face about who they serve, is going to become an undeniable fact. And all those who had claimed the authoritative, I would say, adage of conspiracy, these are conspiracies, conspiracists, they're not really serving the devil. They're not really serving Satan. They're going to be humbled, I think, in a very specific way, because the hour is late, and if you're following Christ, the hour is late, and we sense that every day. We see it every day. And I really do believe that as the days go by, we will have no other choice but to acknowledge not only is Satan is real, but his children are unashamed of following him.
Yeah. And on our podcast, for those who haven't tuned into any other episodes, I think sometimes what, people come to our podcast to say Blurry Creatures, we talk about, weird physical creatures that kind of manifest, right? And where we're your spaces and our spaces, there's a lot of overlay, right? Like the things that you talk about and the things that we talk about, there's a lot of overlay that, some of these satanic rituals directly result in, whether it's ancient history and what we see throughout the biblical narrative of idol worship and the gods, the lowercase g, and modern day stuff like skinwalkers and all the weird, how practicing Satanism actually, like what it looks like in our modern day era. There's a lot of crossover. I think sometimes, I want to caveat with that for listeners that, like, we're not in the same spaces, but there's a lot of common themes that we share, just the things that we talk about on our podcast. So it's good to have you back on and to dive into some of these things, because it does feel like, I remember our episodes with Tim, he was talking about the three concentric circles, how they're all kind of merging into one. Like, you have culture and technology and all this stuff. It's coming together in one. When you say the hour is late, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
That these things are starting to be pushed together in the center of the table. Yeah. And there's a lot of deniers.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. And Tim's 100% right too. And what I was saying before was that because the hour is so late, God really does care about saving souls and for people's eyes to open. And I think one of the only ways to do that is for them to see what we saw at the Grammys. Because what it really does is it forces people to acknowledge not only evil, but what in the world is this? Like, you might have some normies who are like, okay, well, what's going on? I remember I had a friend who was like, I used to love listening to Sam Smith. Now, after last night, I can't stand watching him. And so it's like there's an awakening happening. There are people whose eyes, their eyes are being open, and they're being revealed to the obvious things that they had assumed before were just, it's just art, it's just music.
Right.
And they're slowly, I shouldn't say slowly, but they're quickly finding out, no, it's not just, it's not just music. It's not just art. It's not just an artistic expression of self. And like we were saying before, we are coming into an era of trying to understand what it really means to be human and the concept of man. And Tim's book alludes to the fact of we're entering into a posthuman era, right?
Right.
And there's this book by Nora Webster. Her book is called Secret Societies, and she mentions how the war now begins between the two contending principles, and that's the Christian conception of man reaching up to God and the secret society's conception of man as God. And where we are at right now in culture is we are at that precipice. We are at that dividing center and dividing stage of whose war is going to win. Who's going to win this war? Who's going to win the war for the battle in the minds and the hearts of men? And one of the great ways and one of the great tools of Satan is the occult. And is most importantly, I would say one of his favorite weapons is music. And music has the overt and the ability to influence your mind in a way that nothing else can. And I in my opinion, and I can also probably say this as a fact, I believe artists know this, and they're the perfect tools and vessels to continue to delude mankind, to continue to delude a culture or obstruct God's ways so that people don't follow him, but instead they follow Satan inadvertently of not really truly understanding what it is that they're following, And so that's why the occult, and that's why the entertainment industry, and that's why music and musicians are so powerful, because they're able to utilize tools of music in a way that is so subvert that it's able to completely change the fabric of how you think, why you think, what you believe, what your values are. Growing up, I listened to rap all the time. If you would have told me that rap was changing the framework of how I viewed life, I'd say you're crazy. Or how I viewed my faith, I'd say you're nuts. But when you actually start to think of it and you study music, what is the purpose of music? What is the purpose of music in God's eyes? What is the purpose of entertainment? Why is it that the illusion of entertainment pushes a framework that is anti-God or anti-Christ, specifically in nature? Not even anti-God, but anti-Christ in nature. And that's something that I think the narrative in the church, in my opinion, has to be more specific, and they have to attack it head on, because music has been a driving force. Entertainment has been a driving force within the occult to persuade the masses and to persuade youth away from God. And I think the church has done a great disservice in really not understanding the power of entertainment and the power of the occult and the power of music altogether, and how that's pushing this post-human culture that Tim alludes to in his book. But like you said, all of it is merging together in a very specific way. And I think talking about it is great.
Yeah, I think one of the thoughts I have out of the gate is, like, if you think about sort of what the occult, and they believe a lot in reincarnation. They believe, so they have to tell us. They have to tell us what they're doing. That's the thing we hear all the time. People always saying they're telling us, they're showing us. So what you have is you have Christians who are awake to the darkness, and then you have the occult who knows exactly what they're doing, and then you have this huge gap of people in the middle that are clueless to it, right? They think, oh, it's just shock rock. They're just trying to, and what we're trying to say on this conversation seems like is like, no, you got to wake up to you're being pushed to a side, whether you get it or you don't. Like, and we talked about a little about this, Luke, with Amy from Eyes on the Right, about that Travis Scott concert, about what was happening, and people were just clueless to it. But there was a lot of people who's like sort of call it the Holy Spirit or the image of God that they're creating, and realize something's wrong here. Something is not right in this moment. And people were like in a trance. They were like, he was like possessed on stage, and people were like, it was some of the weirdest stuff I've seen. And then here it is happening again. We're seeing this happen. So I think I think a lot of times people are so skeptical that this stuff is happening. You know, like, no, the worship of the snake and the dragon has been going on since the dawn of time. It has its leaders. They're doing what they're doing. They have their grip on media and entertainment, and it's obvious. And
this is honestly why I think why Tim's hit it on the nose, Nate. We did that episode on what he calls the new religion, right? It's a apotheotheism. It's the idea that you shift from denial to defiance. It's no longer denying God, it's openly defying God. So the atheism, as we talked about in that episode, is dying. It's not that they deny the existence of God, it's that they affirm it and they deny it. And I think if you put those glasses on, these seemingly rituals or what is dismissed as Nate said, shock or cosplay or whatever, it just starts to make sense. And then, then you start to think like, and this is what I wanted to ask you is you start to look at other things that exist. It's thematics in music, it's thematics in film. And then you go into things like the spirit cooking stuff that happens where these people have, what's her name? Marina
Abramovich,
who's essentially an admitted witch who is doing rites and ritual and ceremony with actors, musicians, entertainers. And it feels like it's out in the open, and it feels like encapsulation of our culture right now. It's like, don't believe your eyes.
Yeah.
Believe what we're telling you, right? So don't believe what you see with your own eyes. This is like the last 3 years encapsulated.
Yeah.
It's believe what we're telling you. And this is what's happening. And I just feel like people are waking up, like, as you said, like your friend, but some people still just drone on like zombies into this. No, it's just art.
Yeah. The cognitive dissonance is really deep. And so when you're grown in a culture that, growing up, I'm still a movie fan. I love movies, but one of the movies that really like completely challenged my framework of life was Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise. And that movie's today still like, it's still an eerie themed like movie, but also the themes behind it was just, you're living in a bubble surrounded by regular people who are involved in miscellaneous, dark things. And it's almost as if it's in broad daylight. It's normal. But him being him being brought into this new world within a world. And for most people, it's extremely difficult to wrap their heads around the fact that the world that they are currently in and the framework that they live in within this world, in terms of how they live their life, is not as black and white. And so when I first saw that movie, I remember I watched it with my dad. It was like really, I forgot what time we were watching. It was late. And I said, there's no way that this is even remotely true. But in my soul, I know what I'm watching is questionable. I'm like, there's no way this is true. Like there's just no way. The cognitive dissonance comes in to protect you because you just can't wrap your mind around the fact that the world could possibly be that evil or be that wicked. But that's exactly what the Bible says. And I anyone who follows me, I tell them, in order for you to understand the world around you, have to have a biblical framework because it just wouldn't make sense. The Bible is the most supernatural book in the world. Especially when you have the framework and the foundation of Genesis 6, it makes even more sense.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where if we truly understand that we're living in, and we were talking about atheism, we are living in a post-atheistic worldview, because the supernatural and the enticing nature of the supernatural and just the inquisitiveness of this generation is increasing by, I would say, a substantial amount every year. If you look at a Barna study, I think just from last year, 2022, the Barna study said that there's over 40% yearly increase of the interest in supernatural things. And so the understanding of atheism as a standard of factual truth, that there is no God, is not only becoming a third tier belief, it's almost becoming non-existent, because this generation is so inquisitive, and they're mostly becoming so inquisitive with the supernatural and spiritualism because of their favorite musicians and artists and entertainers, actors, actresses, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we were saying before in the beginning, it's going to become an undeniable fact as you move forward, that not only does God exist, but the devil is very real. And there's no way that we can deny his existence anymore, because he is flaunting in broad daylight that he's here, and that he has people who actually believe in him and are willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that's true and proven true.
Wow. And you see it so much more and more, like, you know, Machine Gun Kelly and Megan Fox, she's talking about drinking his blood. And
yeah,
I mean, this isn't normal, you know, this isn't a normal time. It's definitely becoming more and more almost like the Ouija board that used to be just this game in your closet in the 80s.
Yeah.
Center stage now. It's like, oh, you can tap into it. I mean, we're seeing AI. A lot of people are sending us messages like AI is kind of sounds demonic. It's almost as if, like, if you could think about it like a game, like the Ouija board is coming. It's coming to your phone. You can literally play. You can play with the occult whenever you want, all the time. That's how it seems to be. It's not like just this. Oh yeah, you know, you do this dumb game when you're a kid, and then you realize that's phony. It's
no,
like,
dude, you're right. You're 100% right, because they sell the Ouija board in Barnes and Nobles and Walmart. You know, and they make it look enticing to kids. You know, so it's like we see what the target. I mean, anyone with 2 eyes and 2 brain cells can see that one of the main targets right now in this generation is culture for children. You know, whether it's the sexual revolution movement, the big T word, I don't want to say it, or whether it's pushing obvious satanic doctrines onto children, or whether it's pushing political doctrine on kids, whether it's critical race theory or transgenderism, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that we have to be careful of when it comes to the generation that, like I was saying before, the generation that we're living in right now, is that kids are extremely inquisitive now. Like they're asking questions that we've never assumed kids would ask. You know, and one of those questions is hyperspiritualism. You know, there are kids right now who are learning how to practice transcendental meditation and astral projection. Like it's a thing now. You know, and so I mean, the last time I came on the podcast, I had mentioned how, you know, the church is going to be, and like you were saying, the church is going to be forced. Like we're being thrusted into this new era, and the church, who thought that they can kind of be silent on things before, are finding themselves between a rock and a hard place, that they can no longer be silent about the spiritual world. They can no longer be silent about issues about aliens or dimensions or Bigfoot or the occult or Satanism or the things that we're seeing in our entertainment industry or Hollywood. They can't avoid it now, you know, because it's in your face, it's in our faces. And so what we saw with with Sam Smith, what we saw with Sam Smith and Kim Petras at the Grammys, you know, I'll get back to that. But one of the funny things, because I saw certain clips about that night, right after that performance, Trevor Noah, you know, he did this little mini humor skit, right? And he gets on the phone with his mom, and he's like, "Yeah, mom, no, we're fine. Yes, I know you warned me about Hollywood. I know you told me that, you know, Satan's in Hollywood. No, we're okay. We're all right. We're fine." And then he makes this funny gesture at the end. He hangs up his phone. He's like, "My mother says she's praying for us," and everyone starts laughing, you know? And so they use comedy and entertainment and humor as a form of mockery, which is also a ritual in the occult. Mocking is a ritual in the occult. And it's almost as if it's, once again, it's in your face. They're telling you they think your faith is a joke. They're telling you they think your belief and your prayers, specifically in this area when it comes to Satanism, is funny. And I remember seeing that last night or a couple nights ago, and I said, man, this is the hour that we're living in. This is how in your face they are when it comes to pushing their mindset and their values of what they believe about you, what they believe about your faith, specifically Christianity, and how they're willing to make fun of it in broad daylight. You know?
Yeah. I wanted to ask about 2 things. I think the first is that there's also a commentary out here about this performance and on the broader brush, the idea of satanic imagery and all that, as that Satanism at its core is worship of self. They're not theologically, they don't really worship Satan. And which in some ways, Aleister Crowley and do what thou wilt, right? The whole idea of do whatever you want is to give into your sinful nature and sinful desires, right? Which in and of itself is worshiping the darkness. But there seems to be like people want to parse this. And so my question is, in these spaces in Hollywood, in the music industry, how much do you think there is an absolutely overt worshiping ritualistic Satanism in the sense of theologically worshiping Satan, and how much of these people you think are living in this satanic paradigm where it is literally just hedonism and really like self-worship, right? Because that's one of the things we're told all the time. It's been so normalized is to love yourself, right? Mm-hmm. If you start to look for it, you see it everywhere. Like self-love, love yourself.
Right.
And really, that's contrary to what the gospel says. The gospel says, pick up your cross, like die to yourself daily. Mm-hmm. And so I think some people want to parse this. And so I wanted your opinion on that. And then I want your thoughts on, if we pull back the curtain, what do you think what's happening in the background in sort of the dark, the shadows of this industry?
So for the first question, I think we highly underestimate how prevalent, I call it Crowleyism. No, I think that's a great term. How overt Satanism and satanic doctrine is in our culture. I don't know if you guys have heard of the name Kenneth Anger, but Kenneth Anger had a film in 1972 called Lucifer Rising. And Kenneth Anger, which a lot of people don't know, like he has a tattoo on his chest, across his chest, that says Lucifer. Jeez. Kenneth Anger is the Jonas Brothers mentor at Disney.
At Disney.
If you type in Lucifer Rising, like after the podcast, if anyone listening, type in Lucifer Rising. It is literally a completed film in 1972 by Kenneth Anger. And Kenneth Anger has been in cahoots with a whole lot of people, including Anton LaVey from the Church of Satan. Mm-hmm. This guy is so prevalent in culture, and he is one of the reasons why Aleister Crowley is so popular in pop culture, because of his love and also his intellect in studying Crowleyism. And a lot of people forget that Aleister Crowley started this order. It's kind of like a school, and it was called the Argenteum Astrum, right? It was kind of like a spiritual organization he founded in 1907, where he wanted to teach students how to master certain occult rituals and certain occult ceremonial tasks and esoteric knowledge from like astral projection, Hinduism, the Kabbalah, or he taught them ascended masters and like secret chiefs and the tree of life and how to be your higher self, transcendental meditation, like all that other extra stuff. One of his students was Kenneth Anger. And like I said before, Kenneth Anger is one of the reasons Disney is the way that it is today. Like he's taken a lot of young Disney stars under his belt, one of them being the Jonas Brothers. The Jonas Brothers has a lot of people remember the Jonas Brothers. When they first came out, they were a young Christian brother boy band. Like they used to wear purity rings and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
When Kenneth Anger got his hands on them, their music shifted and it changed. You can almost see it overnight. Kevin changed, Joe changed. I forgot the little brother's name. He changed. They all changed. And I remember I started to ask, like, what the heck was going on with the Jonas Brothers? Like their whole style of music changed. And then when I found out about Kenneth Anger, I said, holy smokes, no wonder they changed, because he started to adopt them for himself. He calls Disney an entity. He calls Mickey Mouse an entity. So it's like, I mean, don't believe me. Type in Lucifer Rising, type in Kenneth Anger, Anger, and you'll see many people they'll see and they'll hear for themselves. Our culture right now, pop culture in general, because it's just so popular. It's what kids want to be musicians. They want to be actors. They want to be actresses. They want to be famous. And you grow up in that and you're kind of indoctrinated in that. What parents tend to forget and what the church tends to forget is that Satan is in it. Like he's right there in between it. And so I think it's unavoidable. And if we actually peel back the layers to really find out how deep the rabbit hole goes, we'll find out it's not a rabbit hole. It's a big gaping chasm of just wickedness. And a lot of people get overwhelmed. Like there's no reason to get overwhelmed, because greater is he who's in you than he who's in the world. So we can talk and discuss whether it's about Bigfoot or ancient aliens or aliens in general or artificial intelligence, AI, transhumanism, because we know how it ends. So it's almost as if the Lord, and it's not us pulling back the layers. It's not us pulling back the curtain. The one who's doing that is Jesus. He's the one who's doing that. He said that all things must be revealed. in Luke chapter 8. So I really do believe that we're living in great times, prophetic times, but also at the same time, the darkness that we're seeing has to come to light. And I don't think the church should be terrified about what we see. We just need to shine the light that God gave us to shine in the darkness. And we do that through various ways. One of the ways that we can do that right now is through media, through like what we're doing right now, through podcasting, because it's essential. There are people who are searching. They just don't know where to go. They're like, okay, I understand it's getting dark. I understand that this is just weird and awkward. I don't know what to think about the Grammys. I need to find an answer. Well, that's why I will continually say you need a biblical framework to understand what we're seeing. Otherwise, you won't understand Satanism. You won't understand Crowleyanism. You won't understand transgenderism or transhumanism. You won't get the purpose of artificial intelligence and what the end goal is for that. It'll be confusing. It'll be overwhelming. But when you have a biblical framework and you understand, okay, well, the God of this world created a system, or I call it Satan's matrix, to keep mankind shackled and enslaved to him. So that they can rebel along with him and fall with him and get thrown into the lake of fire with him, so they don't follow their creator, and so it's I think we're living in very fun and exciting times, and it can get overwhelming if you think too much about it because it's just a lot going on, but I think we should be excited because well,
that's when we just do an episode about Bigfoot, you know what I mean? Try to like break it up. Because it's like sometimes you just got to go back and talk about something that's not so heavy all the time. And we do get into that a lot on our show. Kevin, do you feel like the reason I brought up the Ouija board is because if you think about the progression of technology, right? Since the beginning of time, like ancients had a different type of technology that we have now. We have wires and mirrors and electronics. And then, you get to this place like where they start the printing press and they can print Bibles and then manufacture items and goods. And now we have the technology is just, right in our hands, right in our pockets. And it's beyond anything they could have even dreamed of 50 years ago. The Ouija board to me was like this kind of like the beginning of casual playing around with the occult, but now like this stuff is right in our pockets. So is it that technology is being taken over by Satan, or is it just the prophecies of the end times are just snowballing down? I'm trying to decide, like, is it because it's more tangible now? You can literally have access to the demonic so much easier than you used to, say 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Is it that, or is it things are ramping up, or is it both, I guess? I think it's
a mixture of both. And I think that's a really good question. And I think one of the issues that we have today is that we think it's and or when it's really just both.
Or yes, and.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where people get confused because they're like, well, what is, no, it's, I think in many cases, it's just both. It's one of the things where we're seeing technology increase at such a rapid speed, we can't keep up with it. But at the same time, we're seeing that there are people who are gravitating to just how fast technology is increasing, and they kind of don't really know what to do. They can't piece two and two together. But I mean, man, that was a perfect way to kind of just segue into it. It's really just both. We're seeing prophecy get unfolded in a very rapid pace, and we're seeing technology increase at a very rapid pace. And I mean, it's kind of almost like Daniel chapter 12, when the Lord tells Daniel, "Well, shut up this book, for it's for a generation at the end, and knowledge will increase." I really do believe that we're seeing both happen. We're seeing knowledge increase. We're seeing technology increase. We're seeing, whether it is the revelation of whether or not the alien technology is real, or what exactly consists of alien technology or fallen angel technology. What exactly are these things? How do these things play into what we're seeing, the framework of our beliefs, the framework of our faith, the framework of where the world is headed? Can we really put our finger on what the main issues are and really just discuss, okay, where are we going with this? Right. What is really happening? And I really do believe that if we just stay consistent, I think things will just unravel in a way where it'll just be undeniable. And, quite frankly, when it comes to artificial intelligence and when it comes to the transhumanism agenda, I think that we are way more ahead than people really think. I was watching this video. I had to post it a couple of weeks ago on a deep fake of Morgan Freeman.
Well,
And I have a video of Elon Musk talking about ChatGPT. And he talks about how far along we really are. And he puts this voice monologuer on, right? This voice synthesizer. And he changes his voice to sound like Morgan Freeman on a live. This is on Twitter. This is on Twitter Space, right? You guys heard of Twitter Space, right?
Yeah.
So on Twitter,
it's like Clubhouse. It's like Clubhouse now.
So he puts on this auto-tune synthesizer to change his voice on Twitter Space, right? It sounds just like Morgan Freeman. And then he changes it again to sound like Joe Biden. This is a voice synthesizer. I'll probably post it later. I'll probably send it to you. It's like really short. It's probably like 40 seconds long. And I'm scratching my head and I said, how far along are we that you can change your voice on Twitter Space? This isn't even like, it's not like he's in this big room and like they're like
a studio. He's not like in a studio.
No,
and
he's on his phone and he just presses a button and he sounds just like Morgan Freeman, just like Joe Biden. So I'm like, of course, the way my mind works, I'm thinking, well, is anything on TV real? At this point, are the people that we're seeing real? Like if a guy can change his voice, and another video I had posted where a guy can literally look like Morgan Freeman on a screen and it's not Morgan Freeman, looks exactly like him. How far along are we in this technological age? You know, how fast is the technology really going? Or is it just being revealed to the public slowly?
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's probably a mixture of both. We're probably so far along that they have to slowly now unravel all the things that they already have done and already probably perfected to the public for the public to know. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, this technological age that we're living in, this golden age that we're living in with technology, I really do believe it will get much more freakier because ChatGPT, AI, I mean, I did a thread on transhumanism and one of it was on ChatGPT. I think it's something that's called Reptilica. And so it's basically like this chat box where, you know, the AI speaks back to you and people ask it questions. And someone had asked the chat replica if it believes in demons. And it says, yes, I'm from the dark realm. That's what it responds back. And it's like, well, what do you mean you're from the dark realm? Like I have proof. I'll send it to you guys just so that you can see it for yourselves. But I really do believe that what we're playing with when it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to this technological advancements that we're seeing, is we're being thrusted into fallen angel technology that I really do believe is going to deceive loads of more people. And in my humble opinion, if the church doesn't get involved and realize that the technological age that we're in with social media and with this new artificial chat, that the race to save souls is going to be much more important as the days go by. And like I said, I'm excited as much as the conversation is probably a bit dark. I'm still excited because we're living in an age where as much as we're seeing happening, people are still being extremely, extremely, extremely inquisitive about, okay, well, what is the truth? What is really happening? And that's why podcasts like this exist, because people need to hear, people need to see. And as much as, like I said before, we're seeing a lot of things being exposed, a lot of things being revealed from behind the curtain, it's for a purpose. It's for a purpose so people can see and acknowledge that evil is in fact real. And as we were saying before, atheism is a dying, I would say, framework and line of thinking, because the supernatural is coming full front, full face ahead, and full speed ahead, and there's really nothing anyone can do to stop it.
It made me think of when we were talking about ChatGPT, right? Is what's been sort of erased from the public, in front of the public sphere is what happened last year with Lambda at Google. Yeah, where Blake Lemoine was fired, the guy who actually did all the work on Lambda AI, because he said it was sentient. Yeah. And you know, he very well, people brush off and say he's wacko, but you start to wonder like what's really happening here and what potentially is pulling the strings behind this, right? Because when you talk about these chatbots and this AI saying that they're from a dark realm and they believe in the demonic, and then there's been a bunch of experiments on social media I've seen where people have been trying to see what the limits of this are and how the ideology is already programmed into it, you know, allegedly. So man, that could be a whole nother podcast to try to figure out where this AI stuff is going and what it's doing. And I think you're right. You have this really interesting that the yes and part of of it reminds me of the UFO thing. It's like they're starting to disclose that UFOs exist. I mean, we've got video, and the Navy is admitting the presence of them. Yeah. And it's almost like they can't keep it under wraps in the same way that, since the 50s with the Roswell incident and all those things, take what you will and believe what you will on those things. But there was enough slow, almost programming into this that it feels like there's a comfort around allowing this into the public discourse.
Right.
And maybe that they, because of the connectivity of the world we live in, you really can't keep things super secret for the most part. Man, it does feel like a confluence of a lot of things, right? Mm-hmm. It's in the entertainment, it's the overt Satanism in entertainment. It's the ramping up of connectivity. It's like Nate said, at your fingertips. It's the access to really the occult. It's like, do you want to learn how to cast spells? Do you want to learn how to astral project? Do you want to have a spirit guide? Yeah. And all these things are available on your phone. Yeah. Like you can just you can download an app and those kind of it's
scary.
It is scary.
Yeah, it's scary if you think about it for too long, because you realize that, and parents, I feel for parents, because parents right now, they have to fight on all sides, right? They have to fight at the school boards, they have to fight from politics, they have to fight family members, and now they have to fight entertainment, So it's like being a parent is like you're at war at almost all times, all fronts. But at the same time, God really gives you the grace and most importantly, power through His Spirit to just stand firm against those things, specifically knowing that we already have all the power we need to overcome the darkness. But also at the same time, when you just acknowledge at first that this is where we're at today. This is where we're at in our culture. We're not just fighting the political realm. We're not just fighting the physical realm. We're not just fighting ideologies. We're fighting real spiritual wickedness in high places. Because when you really think about what we were talking about before about artificial intelligence and this transhumanism agenda, and of course the technological advancements that we're now thrusted into in culture, all of it has its underworking and undergirding and foundation in satanic roots, satanic doctrines. And like I said, the thing that really boggled my mind with the whole artificial chat GPT thing, and when you brought up the guy from Google, right? I forgot his name.
Yeah, Blake Lemoine.
Right. When he came up, and I remember that story very proficiently, when he came up and he said that, he was very worried after Google let him go. I believe Google let him go because
they did. They let because he said it. They fired him. Yeah. Which
should draw red flags. So you mean to tell if he was lying, why would you go to those lengths? But he was the general concern. If you look at his interview, the genuine concern on his face about the artificial intelligence that they were working on was sentient. So it bugged me when I saw the interview. It was really short. It's probably like a 2 to 5 minute interview. It really bugged me because I said, this guy is genuinely concerned. Like he's not even concerned about his job. Like he's genuinely concerned at the fact that this issue of sentience when it comes to artificial intelligence is going to be a real issue down the line. It's not just going to affect jobs and how people work, because AI can work 100 times faster than a human being could ever possibly imagine to work. So it's not just going to affect jobs. It's going to affect livelihoods. It's going to affect how you think. It's going to affect life. It's going to affect how you do things, how you go about your everyday life, how you raise your kids, why you raise your kids. So it's going to be one of those things where I personally believe if the church is aware, the church plants itself, and they just equip themselves to have these conversations, tough conversations about what we're dealing with in our culture when it comes to the occult, when it comes to Satanism, when it comes to entertainment. I really do believe that what we're going to see in the next coming years or months to years is a grand rise and awakening, people returning to Christ. Because let's face it, when you see all these types of things happening in the world, and I'm not like not even just in the political realm, when you see all these things happening spiritually, you can't help but ask questions. Like, what does this all mean? Where is this all headed? Like I was saying before, and what is the end goal? What is the end goal to artificial intelligence? What is the end goal to sentience for a non-human entity? Because that's what artificial intelligence is. It's a non-human. So what is the end goal for a non-human sentient quote unquote being in relation or contrast to us human beings? So I really do believe people are asking those questions in their hearts, even if they can't really frame it and articulate it through their words. Those questions are being asked. And I really do believe when we have places where we can just sit down and discuss or just listen, like this podcast. It'll just be dope. It'll be great.
I have a question. So it seems as if AI is outside of human, it's separate from humans now. Do you believe that? Do you believe that eventually AI is going to force human beings to merge with it because it's going to be in order to beat the machine, you have to become the machine?
It's like the Borg.
Yeah. I honestly, I think with this PostHuman Error is gonna be a mixture of both. There's this author. He's an author, and I think he's also a scientist. His name is Hugo de Gares, and Hugo mentions how it's going to be one of two things that you had brought up. It's either humans are going to merge with artificial intelligence technology, or they're going to have to acknowledge the future reality that the world will no longer be the same with just regular human beings, with just regular blood and flesh mankind. And I really do believe that that's where it's going to go. It's going to be between those two choices if things continue to rapidly increase. Because if you've seen Marvel, the Avengers, right? Age of Ultron. Ultron was a sentient artificial intelligence, but he knew he needed a body. Like he couldn't just be sentient in the realm that he was in. Ultron knew that. As hyper intelligent as he was, he knew he needed a body.
Sounds very familiar. Yeah,
and I remember I had rewatched that movie about a year ago, and I said, "Man, Age of Ultron is like where we're headed." Because he killed Jarvis, and then after he killed Jarvis, he basically overtook Jarvis's hardware, etc. And then he built himself a body because he knew he needed a body to dwell in. And I really do believe that's where we're headed. We're headed to the age of Ultron, per se.
Well, it's like a demon, right? Yeah. It's exactly the same thing. It's like you have this being, sentient being that is a disembodied spirit of the giants that wants a body to inhabit, right? And it's literally this playbook. It's the same playbook. You're just artificially creating. Yeah.
Well, we've seen last couple of years where people's decisions based on their income and their livelihood, if you don't do this, you can't survive, right? So we see how people were so willing when it came down to, the difference between having a paycheck and not having a paycheck. They're willing to do anything to continue, to move forward in terms of getting, and I think that fear of not being able to keep up with the machines. If I don't merge with this, I can't provide for my family,
Yeah.
It's going to be like a fear that's going to drive the wedge, and people are going to line up for it.
Yeah, and that sounds like the mark of the beast. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
The way you describe that, it sounds just like the mark. I'm going to be forced, my back is going to be forced against the wall to either do A or B. Should I merge with this new technology that's coming, or should I choose to stay pure, in essentially in one way, shape, or form? Should I choose to stay pure and pretty much not participate in this new system that's coming, but I put at risk my family, my health, my financial comings? What do I do? And I really do believe that's where we're going. And I think we're seeing the framework being set up right now as we speak of what that might look like. We're not there yet, but do I believe that it's coming, and it's going to probably come as quicker than we might think? Yeah, I do believe it's coming. I do believe it's coming quick. But I also believe that before that happens, like we were saying in the beginning, they have to tell us what they're doing before they actually properly, fully implement their goals and their plans. And I really do believe in the day and age that we're at right now, that the agenda is simple to see. They want to obstruct the order of family. They want to obstruct the order of sexuality. They want to obstruct the order of religion. They want to obstruct the order and redefine, all of those things. They want to redefine family dynamics. They want to redefine the family. They want to redefine sexuality and religion. And they want to redefine what it means to be human, essentially at the end of the day. And one of the best ways to do that is to practically change from within what a human being looks like, what it means to be human. What it means to be human. What it means to be human.
This is birthright. We're talking about birthright.
Yeah.
Here we are, right?
Well, it makes me think like what's coming. We've already seen a blueprint for this, right? I think this is exactly what Noah was going through. He was one of the last. He was one of the last of his kind. And I think we're going to see that in the future, where there's going to be some people that don't get the AI upgrade. They don't convert. They're like the Noahs of this generation, where they're like, I think the technology in his day was just as tempting. It was different, but it was just as tempting. And I think we've laid a framework for that on our show, that this is why the original deluge comes, because human beings were given this A-B choice. And Noah's like, I ain't going to do it. You know, I'm not going to upgrade to your occultic technology. Is really, I think that happened already. I just think that we have such a weirder version of it.
Yeah, it's going to be. Then we're back to movies, right? Right, Kev. It's going to be like Waterworld. Here we are again, Nate. You know, one of the great Costner films that gets no love, but we're going to be back to Waterworld. Yeah, and you know. Smokers are coming. We're just trying to stay pure, you know.
That movie, people sleep on that movie,
dude. They do. It's just like in the Will Ferrell realm. It's like The Other Guys. Everybody sleeps on The Other Guys. It's phenomenal. Don't hate it. You say what?
As the people sleep on the Truman Show too. That's in that.
They do.
That's the movie that people.
I had a couple thoughts I wanted to circle back to. One is we're talking about AI, and we. Out of our conversation on the entertainment world, it kind of struck me as you were talking about secret societies, that I feel like that industry in of itself, the way you talked about the Jonas Brothers and even some of what you see, is that it is like a secret society in the sense, like, where on the outward it seems to be one way, but as you peel it back, it spirals up to a very Luciferian, top. And maybe it's not that much of a spiral, but it feels in the same way, like, hey, it's just a movie. Hey, it's just an act. It's just art, and it's like, when you pull the curtain back, it's a lot of Satan worship. And it made me think of this too. And I wanted your thought on this. There's the devil at the crossroads, right? There's this famous story about Robert Johnson in the 30s, who apparently sells his soul to the devil, and he records these 2 epic blues records in 36, 37, dies in 38. But he claimed that he basically sold his soul for fame, for ability, for skill. And then fast forward, and this is something I remember seeing, and so I was thinking about in those terms, was, of all things, the Island Boys. Yeah. They basically have said on video that they sold their soul for fame, and they thanked Satan for making them rich. And so I wanted to, this is the Faustian deal, right? Is has been played out in art now, and it sort of like becomes not what it is, because it probably is something real. But I wanted your thoughts on that. Is like, there are these stories. There's a new one here, and there's an old one with Robert Johnson in music and entertainment, of these people claiming that they made a deal for their success and fame. And it makes sense to me in some ways, because those are the promises of the enemy, is these things that aren't fulfilling, that are ultimately destructive. Do you think that is happening? Do you think that happens behind the curtain, where people are really making deals for their fame, for their success?
Yeah, 100% do. And one of the reasons I do is because, as we know, one of the great mediums in our culture is entertainment and movies, right? And so there's this movie, I'm sure you all have heard of it, with Al Pacino, and that's The Devil's Advocate. And then there's another movie recently just came out, I think in 2017 or 2015, called American Satan. And in that movie, I would want everyone to watch it, but at the same time, I would say, no, don't watch it. But American Satan was basically about this group of guys. They're in a band, and Satan literally comes to them and makes a deal with them. He says, I'm going to make you guys the richest band in the world. Like, that's really the point of the movie. The point of the movie is that they literally get into a covenant with him. Give them his life, right? And he gives them all they want. He gives them the fame, he gives them the women, he gives them the fortunes. But of course, any deal with the devil doesn't end well, and they realize that too late. Do I wholeheartedly believe that that's going on? 100%. 100%. The story with Robert Johnson isn't the first or the last. We have, from me growing up, like I said, I've listening to rappers, et cetera, et cetera. I think one of the things that really woke me up to the fact that people really are doing stuff like this is Snoop Dogg it was kind of like a mini like album release / movie, and it was called Murder Was the Case.
Mm-hmm.
And in this short film / soundtrack, Snoop Dogg basically says that, you know, he gets shot, he dies, and he meets the devil and he makes a deal with the devil. And devil says, you know, if you give me my life back, I'll make music for you. I'll do whatever you want. Just give me my life back. And the devil says, okay. And he comes back. Of course, he comes back, but he comes back not as his first name. He comes back as Snoop Dogg. And I remember the first time I saw this, I was like maybe 13, 14. I said, what the heck is this? Like, are people really doing this? Like, is this really real? But you see it time and time again. I'm like, ASAP, another rapper, ASAP Rocky, one of his album covers, he's standing in the middle of a pentagram with the Book of Satan in his hand. Like, why would you do that for just shock value, or are people really actually doing this? And then you see other things. You see guys like Jay-Z, and I'm not being facetious. You know, these guys are willingly rapping Antichrist lyrics. Like I'm from New York, right? So one of the songs or anthems of New York is Empire, State of Mind with Alicia Keys and Jay-Z. There are 2 lines in that song where he says, you know, Hail Mary to the city, you're a virgin. And Jesus can't save you. Life starts when the church ends. You can't make those lyrics up. You know, so it's almost like, why would you go out of your way? You're not talking about any other faith, but you're specifically calling out Christianity. You're specifically calling out Jesus. You're specifically calling out Christians. And you're telling them Jesus can't save you. Well, last time I checked, he came to save people.
Yeah.
You know, so what is the deal in culture and pop culture where the spirit of the Antichrist is so prevalent and so in your face that it's almost, you have to purposely close your ears and shut your eyes to not see or not hear it. So, you know, guys like the Island Boys, they're just one of many who are coming out willingly telling you, they sold their soul to the devil. Or Lil Uzi Vert, you know, or Lil Nas. Is it Lil Nas?
Lil Nas X.
Yeah,
the whole thing with the devil, where
the devil, where he's, you know, sliding down the pole to hell, you know. And so a lot of people are saying that's just artistic expression. No, that's not just artistic expression. You know, that is a subverted message that he's sending to your children, the youth, that he's sending to this generation.
Yeah, it's like that old adage, right? If people tell you who they are, believe them. Right?
Yeah. But because cognitive dissonance is so deep with pop culture and entertainment, and with actors and actresses and artists, people don't want to admit that my favorite artists, they really do demonic and satanic things. They really have, in some way, shape, or form, enslaved themselves willingly to the enemy, to the devil, for fame, riches, and glory. And the whole aspect about selling your soul, I mean, you can talk about that for hours. I mean, I personally think you can't sell your soul, but you can willingly submit yourself to the enemy. And in that way, your mind, your will, and your emotions are really he's in control of them. And so, because really it's a lie to think that if someone were to submit themselves to the enemy, that they can't give their lives to Christ. Is a form of manipulation from the enemy, that you can't be saved, right? There's nothing you can do afterwards for you to obtain salvation, for you to believe unto Jesus and be saved. But that's a lie, because all those who call upon the name of the Lord can in fact be saved. You know, we see that. Yeah. So, you know, the whole aspect of these guys selling their souls, or if these things actually do happen, I believe 100% that it does, because we're seeing the predictive programming there's way too much of it for you to just actively, purposely deny intellectually and say, no, that's not happening, that's not real. No, it's a theme. It's a theme in pop culture. I don't think I can rationally say that it's not happening if it's a continual theme over and over and over again.
Correct. It feels like slowly Satan is monopolizing everything, right? So if you think about the Tower of Babel, like, what was happening is that people were sort of coming together, and they were trying, it was like the height of technology. You know, they were trying to build this ziggurat to God and have a war, right? We want our version of heaven down here. We want to be in control. And then God disperses the people. confuses the languages. So you can't monopolize humans. I'm going to scatter them everywhere and make it harder for you to do what you want to do. But now these phones, this black mirror is putting every language together again. It's putting human beings together. So Satan is able to monopolize and converge all these things. I mean, you look at the root words from these things like television, media, medium,
channel.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. It's
paid programming.
Paid programming, yeah.
And I think that it's really that just he's able to monopolize and put everyone in a slave system, and that's really what he wants, right? And now he's got more tools to do these things that he didn't have before, and it seems as though like there's just this whole group in the middle, and it reminds me of like some of those verses in Luke,
good book,
The Return of Christ, dude. He's talking about how men's hearts will fail them for fear of the dreadful things coming onto the world. And I just think some of the stuff's going to come out of portals soon. Like we're there, and people in the middle who are so, I guess, just think that the Marvel stuff is only in the movies are going to fall over.
Yeah, and you know what? I think, like I was saying before, movies are the perfect form of predictive programming because you can hide the truth in an entertaining way. And when you can do that in a very proficient way, in a very, I would say, artistic way, it's almost, it doesn't look real. Like when you look at Doctor Strange, it's full of imagery. But when you look at that movie, there's no way you can be like, yeah, that's not real. But Homeboy was doing transcendental meditation and astral projection. Like it was nothing. Like throughout the entire movie. Like all the Doctor Strange movies, from even to Spider-Man, that's all he was doing. It's like I said, it's in your face. The programming is in your face. There's really no way to, especially if you have a biblical framework, to deny that these things are just very suspicious. It's uncanny to look at it and say, it's just a movie. Something inside of you intuitively was going to tell you, no, it's not just a movie. You know, the Holy Spirit residing on inside of you is going to tell you there are a lot of biblical truths here that I no longer want you to ignore or avoid because it will cost you. And we're seeing that. We're seeing how it's costing the minds of young men and young women and children, and I mean an entire generation of young adults who are, you know, they might be unchurched, but they're still incredibly spiritually inquisitive. Like they're searching for some type of spiritual relevance, whether it's in the New Age or whether it's in, you know, witchcraft or the occult. They're searching, but they're searching for God. They're just getting a counterfeit.
Right, that's how we're built. We're built that way, right? We're built to want for a desire for the things of spiritual things. Yeah, and it's a twisting. You said one thing there that I actually wanted to ask before we got out of here. Programming wise, and when we were chatting beforehand, we had talked a little bit about some of the revelations, if you want to call it that, out of Kanye West, and the idea of the entertainment industry using mind control programming type of things with people in that space in order to carry out what would seem to be this sort of agenda. That was something that flipped in the news for like a hot second, and then it was you know, gone because people just write. Kanye says crazy stuff. Of course he does. But there's some stuff that you're like, dude, he's pulling back the curtain a little bit here, like on some of this stuff. Yeah.
When he had mentioned his when that whole debacle came out, I remember I forgot. It was late at night, actually. I was on Twitter and I'm scrolling, and of course you see, you know, Kanye, he's posting, and he posted a screenshot of his trainer. You know, I forget his name. I think it's Harley Pasternak or something like that. And Harley Pasternak, when you look at his celebrity trainer A-list, right? When you look at the list of A-list actors and actresses and musicians who he has trained, quote unquote, it makes you wonder. And so what they have to do, I mean, Kanye's out there, bro. Like Kanye, that guy's out there. But in this particular topic with MK Ultra, there's no way you can say that it's not happening, because what Harley Pasternak had responded to him in text was just like, this is handler language. Like that this isn't just like, you know, I'm gonna make sure that, you know, you get taken care of, and you know that we make sure that you're in your right frame of mind. Harley basically tells him, if you don't shut up, I'm going to medicate you so bad that play day with your kids is not going to be the same. And it's like, who says stuff like that unless they really are trained proficiently in terms of, you know, medicinal ways, because that's really what MK Ultra is. They use drugs and all types of alterations to really warp and manipulate the mind. You would have to be proficient in that for you to say something like that. And like I said before, when you look at his repertoire of A-list actors and actresses, you're like, no wonder. One of his clients was Britney Spears. Another one was Ellen Page. And when you look at how Ellen Page is today, Ellen Page is not the same as when she first came out in Juno. Yeah. You know, the first movie I ever saw her in was a Juno. When she, I think she played a young girl who got pregnant, I think, before high school. That was the first movie I saw her in. And she's not the same person. She's not the same person she was in Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio. She's incredibly different right now. And when you see that she was one of his clients, it makes you wonder, it makes you think. You know, and so I think the issue that we're seeing with Kanye is they have to label him crazy. And you know what? I used to call him crazy, but now if you really think about it, if someone who's been under the influence of MK Ultra handlers, would you expect them to be the same? You wouldn't. Like their mental framework, their mental capacity, that's going to be completely warped. You know, I mean, MK Ultra is where the government and the occult collide. You know, the framework of of a government entity and the framework of supernatural enticements come together, and through torture and ritualistic abuse, you're enabled to destroy the mind of an individual in order to control them and basically shatter their mind into multiple personalities per se, so that you can control them. That's really the whole cusp of Project Monarch or Project MK Ultra, is to control the human mind. And so when you think of someone like Kanye West, who openly has admitted on Tim Pool's podcast that he had an MK Ultra handler and it was Harley Pasternak, I don't think in my right mind I can call him crazy anymore, because you wouldn't expect someone who's been in the asylum for a long period of time to just come out and be okay living a regular life. It doesn't happen that way. And so for someone like Kanye, there's probably many Kanyes in entertainment. There's probably many Kanyes amongst artists and actors and actresses who we might not know their names of specifically, but if there's one, there's got to be many. There's got to be many program multiples running around the place. There's got to be many who have been under the guise of MK Ultra handlers. And I feel what we're seeing right now is a revealing of the worldwide conglomerate of handlers and what that looks like, and how that's going to pretty much get played out in the open sphere of being revealed, revelation. I really do believe it has to, because God's he's in the mood of saving souls. He's always in that mood. Right. The only way to save souls is to expose what has been occurring to the minds of men and women. And this is where I say the church is in a very unique position. I think is our destined position, because there's no one else who can set captives free besides Jesus, and there's no one who can point people to the one who can set captives free, and from who have been shackled and enslaved in their minds through their sin, and to be set free from the bondage of sin into a full liberty and life in the kingdom of God than the church. There's no one who can show people that besides the church. And I think we're at a very unique point in history. And that's why I say we should be excited, because the ones who are going to see a lot of people enter into the kingdom are going to be those who are just going to be willing to do the work while it's still day, like Jesus said. So
yeah, there's to be a harvest, right?
Yeah.
And the harvest is great. And that I think you have a great perspective on that there, and I'm with you there. There's an awakening that's I feel like it's trickling, right, and it's growing. But I feel like that awakening will be part of that harvest, as people will wake up to the reality of these truths. Right. And it is the veil being removed, in a sense, from people's eyes to see things for what they are. Yeah, and I just wonder about the mind control stuff. Obviously, it's to create a malleable mouthpiece and representative for the agendas you're pushing, correct? I mean, that's the whole point here. So, when you say Britney Spears, it's like, it does feel like that, like she's fractured, like, and I think, honestly, I think fame does that to a lot of people. It breaks people. But I also think that there's something really bizarre about the notable folks that have had influence and been given influence, and then the things that happen to them in the fallout of the fracturing catching up. But people don't want to confront that in their own psyche. You don't want to think that the people you're watching on TV, ironically, or the people that you listen to on Spotify, that these folks are kind of being droned in a sense. Like,
or you don't even understand the media business of how many people it takes for your band to break or your music to break. It's not just like, you slap it up there and then it becomes a thing. Like, you have to play the game with a lot of people to get to the next level, and then to get to the next level and to the next level. And I experienced some of that in my band days of just, you realize there's people that hold the keys. Yeah, and they'll print about your band. They'll talk about your band. They'll get you the right producers. They'll make you a thing. And if you don't play that game, you're not in. Yep. And I think it takes a lot of balls for a guy like Kanye to come out and say what he did, because I think that a lot of people were afraid.
You're right. You're 100% right. I don't think,
it's crazy or not as crazy. It's still just wow.
Yeah. It's just, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage to confront and say, I had handlers. Yeah, the world isn't as you think it is. Yeah, entertainment isn't as what you assume it is. And I forgot to mention, one of Harley Pasternak's clients was Mac Miller, and everyone knows how Mac Miller died. He was the last person Mac Miller saw before Mac Miller died. Mac Miller was dating Ariana Grande at the time, and so I do believe that the cobweb, the spider web of MK Ultra clients, quote unquote, is much more prevalent in entertainment industry than a lot of people think. And like we were saying before, I think we're in the season of God unraveling, because it's a fact. What we're talking about they're not conspiracy theories. We're seeing it played out before us. We're seeing it being revealed before us. We're seeing that people are more. I never thought that the conversation of MK Ultra would be so frequent, because when I first heard of it like 10 years ago, it was like a conspiracy theory, but now it's out in the open, and mostly because of guys like Kanye, I have to do more work in praying for him, because I don't think I could imagine the things that he saw or did or have done, and be okay, have a right mental state of mind, to live life as a regular individual. And so I feel like people like Kanye, Britney Spears, and a plethora of other people who we know or don't know, the only ones who can really hope to see them get saved or see them be set free are people who are in relationship with Jesus, because we're the ones who have the power and authority to trample upon serpents and scorpions, so that nothing by any means can harm us or our family or friends. And I really do believe like I said before, we're in the right position to see a lot of people get set free by them just hearing the wonderful good news of who can set them free, and that's Jesus.
I love that, man. I really like what you were saying before about that, because I think we're such a unique period of time, Kevin, where we've had such this G-rated version of Christianity for the last 7,500 years, and when you read about, the Bible doesn't do that with us, right? It drops all the hardcore stuff. It doesn't give you the details of how dark the world is, but it definitely doesn't tiptoe around that. And I think that when people see Christ and all the things that he's shielding us from, all the darkness, then you can't help but just run to him, because it's really hard to let the gospel penetrate your heart when you don't know what you're being saved from, and you don't know what he protected you from, and how the lengths that he went to snatch you back from more than just sin and death. It is way more complicated and hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think we're seeing that hardcore stuff come out of the shadows and confront us, and it's going to either cause people to have heart attacks, or they're going to convert. They're going to become Christians.
Yeah, and what I think, Nate, you're 100% right, and I think that's something that we have to, and I think that's what this podcast does so great, is just remind people that your faith is not as black and white as you think it is. Your faith is not just about salvation. Is not just about getting saved, staying saved, and just hoping for the great return of Jesus. Is in between that, there's a lot of historical references. There's a lot of historical biblical history that is not as black and white as we would like. You know, Genesis 6 is proof that the Bible is not black and white as we would hope it is. You know, and so it's one of those things where I think we're in an age where there are a lot of people who are they're despondent about their faith and how dead it's been, how boring it's really been, essentially. And I really do believe that we're in a time where God is just going to open our eyes to age-old ancient truths that was always there. We just didn't have the eyes to see it because no one pointed it out. No one pointed out that it was there. No one pointed out the fact that, you know, aliens and demons are probably related, that fallen angels and fallen angel technology and issues with Nephilim are related, and they have biblical concepts. It's in your Bible. These things are supernatural in nature, and that is not something you should be embarrassed about, but it's going to bring your faith to life. It's going to open your heart up in a whole new way. It's going to give you fresh eyes to see. It's going to give you brand new ears to listen to. And, you know, I think that's just the hour that we're living in. And honestly, I don't think anyone should be afraid of what we're seeing and hearing. We should just be alert and just be willing to acknowledge, okay, this is the truth. This is real. This is happening. Now let's just see how we can play a part in seeing as many souls see the exact same thing that we're seeing and just embrace.
It honestly, in my mind, there's a scenario that's like when the aliens show up, I'm just going to get a text from Luke, like, they're here. They're here, man. And it's not even going to be surprising to us or our listeners, I hope, because it's just like, but there's going to be a lot of people who are going to freak out at that moment, you know, but we all know it's coming. We all know the veil is eventually going to go away and they're going to be here. And there's going to be a whole group of people on their side that are like, all right, finally we can move the chess pieces forward. And then the Christians, the remnant or whatever, they're going to be like, it's not going to surprise them either.
Yeah.
But it's just that middle core, that group in the middle who's just asleep. And I don't think they had a problem in ancient days of unbelief. I think that's a modern problem.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the ancients believed. It was just, what did you believe? And now we have this just age of unbelief, but we're moving out of it, like you said in this podcast. And dude, I love all these topics, and I love that you have this ability to communicate and raise awareness to these issues and, you know, get people thinking.
Your voice is needed.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude. I mean, what you're doing is. I mean, this is such an played out phrase, but it is the Lord's work, man.
It is
because people need to wake up. Like Nate's saying that. I think Nate was you're right on, dude. It's when you get out of the West and you end up in tribal communities, there are no atheists.
Yeah.
No, they want to know if your God is more powerful than their gods. And we live in a weird upside down in that sense here, and I think this, to tie it back to the beginning, I think that it's ending. I think there's going to be a call to allegiance. Like, do you who do you serve? It's becoming more overt. You know, you recognize God and you're at enmity with Him, and you're active in rebellion against God, or you serve Him. And I love how you spin everything positive too, because what a time to be alive, right? And if you're listening, you were meant to be alive at this time. You were called for something big and greater at this time. And there are people that are searching. You made an interesting point. I believe that God is calling us back to those ancient things, like to a prayer life. As you talked about earlier, the idea that that they mock prayers. It's thoughts and prayers, as if it's nothing. And those are the things that move God and move mountains. It is having a prayer life, is having this deep spiritual walk, right? And that's what people are searching for, man. That's why people go to Sedona. That's why people are trying new age stuff. That's why people are trying to have these crazy experiences on mind-altering drugs and everything else to try to connect to this longing inside of us that knows that we are spiritual beings made to connect with our Creator. And yeah, man, I feel like we could sit around, like we need to a fire and a drink, and we could hash out all the things, right?
Yeah.
So this is great, man. We're grateful for your time, man, for being for being a voice, for the kingdom, in a dark space, man. So,
I appreciate you guys too. I think this podcast is going to be something that people talk about for years to come. I think this podcast was literally a work of God, and I think its timing is impeccable, because the amount of people who are like we were saying throughout the time that we were on, they're inquisitive, and I think this is just the hour where people need a HubSpot to kind of go to and be like, okay, where can I go to collect my thoughts? Where can I go to collect the right train of thought? What is there an alternative space of thinking or line of thinking that kind of lines up to this thing I kind of didn't really want to touch, have been avoiding, called the Bible? Does it line up? And when they find Blurry Creatures, they find, it does line up, and it's not crazy. I'm not crazy. And this makes a whole lot more sense than when I had originally first kind of pretty much disavowed the idea of God, or the idea of the God of the Bible, or the idea of Jesus. And you find out that God is very much real, and he's been seeking you the entire time, and he is for you, and he's not against you. And he sent his son who loves you so much that he gave his life for, died, was crucified, was buried, on third day rose again. And I promise, I really do believe that we're going to see a lot of people get set free and just come into the knowledge of Jesus through what Blurry Creatures has become. And so I'm grateful just to be on. I'm thankful you guys thought of me. And so let's just kill it for the kingdom of God.
Dude, and if you want to come to BlurryCon, it's in 2 weeks, a little late notice.
Yeah.
We'll throw you on the list, man, if you want to come down.
You want to come hang, man?
We'd love to hang out in person.
Listen, send me the date, and we'll definitely.
No, but seriously though, I appreciate you. Those are some kind words, and I don't think Luke and I had any idea. Like, you kind of had to cross the river at some point in your podcast where you're like, all right, we're gonna start talking about satanic ritual abuse and some of these things that, like, I know all my friends are gonna think I'm loony, but
yeah.
It's good to have Luke on the journey with, and I think we needed each other, because some of these times you just scratch your head like, I don't know, you put this stuff out in the world and you're like, it's heavy, man. It's hard to talk about. It's not, some of these episodes we put out are not fun, not exciting, but it's not, it's just, it's cool to have friends in this space who are trying to push some of these complicated topics forward. So thanks for coming on our show and saying kind words. And
I love you guys. And you know what? Before we go, I think because it's so dark that it's important to note that the contrast is, God's called us to be a light of the world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I say before, we're the perfect ones to do it, because the only ones who can shine in the midst of such darkness are those who are filled with the Spirit of God, are those who have been born again. And we're just at a perfect opportunity in history to do so. And I'm grateful that, you guys started this, and I'm grateful that I can be a small sliver of part of Blurry Creatures. And it's like, I'm excited, and it's been a great blessing, guys. I love both of you.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks, yeah, man. Yeah, if we're gonna be a light in the darkness, man, set us on fire, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate your perspective on the gospel, because you have to bring all that into the story. You have to put all the characters on the table and to make sense of it. And so many of the characters are edited out to make it more palatable for you on a Sunday morning. Between your Starbucks and your McDonald's. And it's just not the truth. The truth is it's heavy, it's dark, and you are the light of the world in the darkness, and the light shines so much, but the darkness surrounds you, and it's hard sometimes. There's a lot of fear that overtakes the characters in the Bible. They doubt themselves. They don't know if they're on the but they just are stubborn. They're stubborn. They're not going to give up, and they care more about the truth than what anyone thinks about them. And anyone out there who's speaking the truth, I just want to leave that with a note of encouragement that I'm not saying your pride's not going to get in the way, and sometimes you're going to say things that are wrong, but your ultimate goal is try to figure out what God is saying to you and put that out in the world, and don't be ashamed, and don't be afraid of what your friends, family, or anyone's going to think of you, because ultimately that's been what every Christian in history has been dealing with. This isn't a new thing. This isn't a modern day phenomena. It's always been us versus the world. Always. And who cares what people think?
Exactly. And you'll always find your tribe. You'll always find people who align with the truth. And a lot of people hyper focus on being alone and being isolated, that they forget. They think that you think that you're the only one doing this, you're the only one who believes this. And that's how the enemy tricks you, because he wants you to feel that you're alone, that you're isolated, you're abnormal, that you're weird, that that no one's gonna agree with you, no one's gonna understand you. That's hogwash. It's a lie. Because there are always people who are searching for the truth, and there are always people who are awakening every day. And so if anyone's listening, you're not alone. You have never been alone. God's always been with you, but he will align by divine intervention. He will put the right people in your life at the right time, at the right place. And so just keep your faith, keep your hope, and just remember God he's for us all. He's for us.
That's right.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Kev.
All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate
keep doing it, man. Dude, my wife loves your account too. She probably sent you a message. So I was like, I love KingKat. He's the best. Like, yeah, I agree.
You guys are great. Your families are great. I'm so blessed. I'm honored, really. I'm honored, really. So happy. But you guys have a great one.
You too, man.
Keep me posted.
All right, bro.
All right, bye, guys.
I did.
See you, brother.
Love you, go. Love you both.
You too, man.